I'll be back.
And you will know my name is the Lord. I'm walking here.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Groovy.
What I found out is wherever I go, I can make fun. I can just have it.
You can make fun.
That is going
I find
on Cody's
boring
tombstone.
places and I make them entertaining to me. Is everyone ready to record?
Ready in a second. I'm trying to see if I can get my recorder started.
Also, Mike, remind me to show you something before we sign off for the night.
Your dick?
Yes.
Not again.
No, actually, only Mike can see it.
Literally, only I can see it.
Other people have tried.
weird.
They've failed.
It's a ghost dick.
Mystic dick. Spectre dick.
Starring Jim Carrey.
Coming to theaters, 1996.
Jim Carrey would play a horny ghost at one point.
Okay, so here's my porn parody pitch of The Mask. Instead of Jim Carrey putting the mask on his face, it's a tiny condom with magical, wacky, mischievous powers. And then the movie just writes itself from there. They still do the Cuban Pete scene, but naked.
Right, so like he puts the mask condom on his dick, and
Well,
then
it's
it
just
forms over him in a horrifying CGI scene. He goes, oh! And he spins around and suddenly, he's Big Head.
Yes. Exactly like that, actually.
Oh, is his entire body green, or is it just his dick?
No, he's all
does
green.
The dick talk?
He's all green. The dick, well, fuck it, yeah, the dick talks. I made the executive decision.
The dick talks.
The dick talks.
You just described every porn executive meeting in history. Fuck it, the dick talks.
I thought about it for 3 seconds, yeah, it's gonna talk.
Okay, how about instead of it just talking for no apparent reason, let's put a little logic into it. The face on his actual face drops down, and you're just left with just a featureless head.
That's horrifying.
That
That's
actually-
make me want to jack off.
I'm sorry.
No.
That's horrifying.
Yeah, that's a little much.
It was
That's
very erotic up until now.
I mean, if you can get away with Edward Penis Hands, you can get away with this, but your thing,
They
that's some
did
sort
not
of
get
horrible
away with
Lovecraft.
Edward's hands. The people who made Edward's penis hands were sent to jail.
So disturbed. I've seen Nightmare on Elm Street porn parodies that are recent, where he has dildo hands. But the weird thing about that is it's kind of played dead straight. He just happens to have dildo for hands.
Like dildo fingers, or his hand happens to be one giant dildo?
Oh no, it's dildo fingers.
Okay,
He has
that
the
makes more
glove, but it
sense.
has dildos.
That just sounds helpful.
Do they still do the telephone thing, like the "I'm your boyfriend now"?
Then it goes on for 20 minutes.
She just starts making out with the phone. Oh.
I've seen an Exorcist parody that was also played dead straight, except, they fucked the entity out. Which seemed to work. I wish Exorcist actually went that way. That would have been a wrinkle in the third act.
Exorcist movies have been stale for a long time. That's how they're gonna get things moving now. They're just gonna fuck the demons out.
Six or something.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
baby.
Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
Action Paris.
Father cute ass.
Ooh. I need a young priest and an old priest. Scratch that. I need a young priest and a sexy priest.
Max von Sydow fits either description.
He's all the priests in that scene. He's just masturbating is what I'm saying. Anyways, hello everyone. And welcome to Box Office Pulp.
No!
Podcast.
This is...
Let me finish, Mike. Let me finish.
No!
Can I say this is the greatest intro we've had for an episode to this day?
I think it's fantastic.
But it's for this! That's so inappropriate!
You're right.
Is it?
But this is the podcast for movies, moxie, and madness. And yes, at the moment, memorials and porn parodies. Anyways, I'm your host, Cody, and joining me today are the people under MB's stairs. Say hello, MB.
I don't want to say anything. They're watching. They're listening.
James, the last house on the left of Alabama, Lewis.
Revenge.
And lastly, the nightmare on my personal Elm Street, Mike Napier. Say hello, Mike.
This is God.
No,
Pointing to my dick.
That's where I thought we were going with this. If you haven't gathered so far, we're here today for a special memorial episode.
God damn it! and I did the dick joke. Jesus.
Dedicated to the late, great king of horror, Wes Craven. May God rest his soul.
hate this fucking podcast.
Rest in peace.
With us.
A lot of things. I really want to take this episode now and edit out all the porn jokes except for your dick joke. I just make you look like the asshole, but that would involve effort.
And I'm editing, so I'm not going to make myself look like an asshole.
Why not? It's fun.
I do that on my own.
So, yes, anyways, ignore all the stupid shit we say, folks at home. We have a lot of respect for Wes Craven, and we're just assholes who find dick jokes really funny. We can't stop talking about dick jokes. It's a personal problem. Anyways.
Honk, honk.
Look, this isn't the Clive Barker tribute episode.
That's
He's
true.
Still alive.
That one will do very somberly. No dick jokes allowed.
H.G. Geiger, we're just gonna go all out.
I'm just gonna make Geiger noises.
What's that?
Like radioactive clicker. We're gonna drop.
I know, but I wanted you to do it.
I'm not your performing monkey.
We're doing it live, Cody.
We're doing it live. God damn it.
Oh, I spilled this hot drink on me. Oh.
Ooh.
God damn it.
This episode is just cursed already.
We're falling apart.
Did you honestly spill something on yourself?
Yes. I'm okay.
What a clusterfuck.
It was mostly lemon juice and honey, so it's okay.
Goes down
Speaking
smooth.
of cursed,
I'm keeping the rickets away with lemon juice.
Oh, good job. MB, that was a wonderful attempt at a save. Yeah, you done
and
good,
it
kid.
failed.
He tried. Let's actually move on to talking about Wes Craven, as long as, we're here to talk about Wes Craven. As a kid, my parents didn't, I'm gonna do some personal stuff now. We're gonna draw this back in. As a kid, my parents didn't really bar me from watching any horror movies, but I was kind of like a wuss about them. I would mostly go to the library and rent the Universal monster movies. So I would hear people talking about horror films and I would get scared. And I remember one time my mom was telling a friend about watching a new movie, Scream, and she was describing one scene at the end of the film and I was just terrified. I didn't understand it was supposed to be funny, but she was laughing at the scene at the end where Billy and Stu are stabbing each other, and Stu lets out the line, "I'm feeling a little woozy here." And my mom's laughing while she's describing this, and I'm like around the corner just terrified of this idea. Like,
Woozy, no!
Woozy, no. The idea that, like, you could be so incapacitated, like you're dying, and you know you're injured, but you're not in your capacities enough to actually do anything about it. Like, to me, that just sounded horrifying. So for years, before I even saw Scream and fell in love with it, I just had this terrifying image in my head of a poor man bleeding out who's not actually all there.
I like how that was your introduction to Stu.
That's my introduction to Stu and Scream and Wes Craven. It all really stuck with me. And the other one was, Bravo used to show the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I'm not exactly sure why, but they did. And they would play Nightmare on Elm Street 2 pretty often. And I never managed to catch anything more than just bits and pieces. So one day I was sitting down and I caught like the last 5 minutes of that movie where there's the final jump scare of Freddy's glove shooting through someone's chest while they were sitting on a bus. And that freaked me out. So, like, as a kid, I wasn't able to watch a lot of Wes Craven's movies, but I was fascinated by them. I had all these stories going around in my head, like, you get a chunk of a movie and you have to film it yourself, in your mind, you just make up the details. So before I even saw anything of his, it terrified me. I know it's not as good as having, like, a Freddy Krueger cutout, like, in a bathroom terrorizing me as I try to pee, but, hey kids, that's a reference to our recent commentary you can go download now! Self-plug.
I wonder I'm trying to think what my first exposure to a Wes Craven film was. I think it was probably the first Nightmare on Elm Street, because as has been noted on this podcast previously, I was allowed to watch a lot of inappropriate movies when I was far too young. I actually just had a conversation earlier today with my mother about why I was allowed to watch Hellraiser at like age 5.
What was her excuse on that one?
Didn't have one.
Just whatever, seemed fine. You
did not have one.
It was the 80s.
She texted me out of the blue today just to tell me, like, Hellraiser is 28 years old today.
Wow.
It's like, thanks. I mean, I'm happy to know that. Like, happy birthday, Pinhead, but that was weird.
This all explains so much, by the way.
So definitely my first experience would have been a Nightmare on Elm Street. My brother probably showed that to me. And then my next major exposure, before I even watched the Scream movies, which I fell in love with later, would have been was 12 or 13, and there was a commercial on the Sci-Fi Channel. One of those like movie montage commercials they do. They still do it sometimes, but they did a lot back then. And in it was Mitch Pileggi's walking out of a TV. And once again, my mother was there. Growing up, we big X-Files fans. That's what we did together. We watched the X-Files. So I was like, what the hell is that? Why is Deputy Director Skinner stepping out of a TV wearing an orange jumpsuit? And she told me that it was a movie called Shocker, because of course my mother had seen Shocker. And she told me what it was. Like, she gave me kind of like a brief overview of like they jump in and out of the TV and stuff like that. I was like, well, I need to fucking watch that right now.
I just like the idea of trying to explain to a young, impressionable child the plot of Shocker.
Jumps into TVs, yo. Takes holes.
She left out the possession part. As you should. So I ran down to the video store like the second we got out of the house.
Imagine like an 8-year-old Mike skipping down the road. I have to go rent a video, mother. Do.
And I watched Shocker.
Shocker!
And my life changed for the better. Like, that's where my love of schlock horror cinema came from, was Shocker. And that's like the first time I heard Megadeth, which explains so much. Because Shocker is just, it's prestige schlock at its best.
Can we go ahead and just talk for a minute about Shocker?
I think we can afford a little bit of time to cover Shocker.
Shocker!
Thank you.
We led like lambs to the slaughter. Shocker! Shocker!
Oh God, stop him now. Stop him now.
I was really hoping like for a Shocker echo, but that was even better. That was.
I just want to state for the record that Mike was the one to introduce both James and I to Shocker.
Yeah, you guys recently just sat down and had like a Wes Craven week, didn't you? Where you watched, what was it, Shocker, The People Under the Stairs, New Nightmare.
We've had a Wes Craven month and a half.
Nice. What is that experience? Because MB, you haven't seen most of these, correct?
Well, yeah, I'm kind of, as with most cases, I'm generally the least knowledgeable about a director's entire filmography because, like, even my favorite directors I haven't seen even close to every film of. But with Wes Craven particularly, I'd only seen maybe 2 or 3, maybe even 4, if you count like the Scream sequels. And I mean, I grew up. I think my story is kind of similar to yours, actually, Cody, where my first exposure was seeing Scream as a kid, not really getting that it was funny and being kind of scared of it because just the visual of Ghostface as like this, creepy killer in a mask. Like, that was the first time I ever saw like a slasher movie character, ironically enough. And then later on, I through osmosis, I discovered, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I actually saw Red Eye was one of the first Craven movies I think I ever sat down and watched of my own volition, like all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, because I love comic books, I discovered that he directed Swamp Thing, so I watched that.
Oh, did he ever direct a Swamp Thing movie?
Yeah, but going back to Shocker, up until we started watching the movies, because obviously when we learned that Wes Craven had died, it was a very big shock, and we kind of quickly managed to scrape together this sort of tribute episode where we knew we were going to talk about a lot of films, but the problem was I hadn't seen a lot of his films, so we just kind of sat down and sort of banded together to watch as much as we could fit into virtually a week worth of material. And through that, I've seen maybe a third of Wes Craven's actual filmography now. So Shocker was one that it was the first one that Mike showed us, and oh my God.
How do you put Shocker into words? Just all the shit that happens in that movie.
Okay.
As Mike said, as Mike said very eloquently, Shocker isn't necessarily good. Shocker is awesome.
Yes.
Shocker is unlike any movie, any show, anything I've ever seen. Okay, Shocker begins with this serial killer, and he's eventually caught and put in prison for these murders that he's committed. And this is about, like, I don't know, like, Act 2, maybe? Like,
It's like 20 minutes into the movie.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's way further. Like, the execution itself happens like 45 minutes in, at least.
The first act of this movie is like 45 minutes long.
And we're ignoring the whole part where there's, like, astral projections.
Yes, Shocker starts out. Yes, it is everything. As soon as you get tired of one thing, it becomes a completely different thing. Like, it starts out like, okay, it's a serial killer movie. It has some supernatural stuff, like, okay, he's having some visions.
Yeah.
Then,
okay, the scene I'm talking about, the scene I've been leading up to is we cut to Pinker in his cell holding jumper cables.
In a pentagram.
And he has, like there's a television there, and there's, like, something is coming out of the television because he's calling forth the dark arts. I guess try and make himself immortal or something.
To make himself an Electro Man.
He wants the power, MB. And those giant lips come out and say, "You got it, baby."
He's not joking. Giant lips, giant animated lips come out. This movie goes from 11 to 11 billion. Like, it doesn't even go from 1 to 11. It goes from 11 to just infinity.
And then it becomes a possession movie for a little while, and you see a little girl in a fucking bulldozer, a sneaky bulldozer, fucking cursing, going after fucking the director of Battleship.
Yeah, the director of Battleship is the star of this movie. Peter Berg, like a young Peter Berg, is playing like a high school jock.
Giving the most 80s performance ever caught on film.
Yeah, it's such a weird combination of really stilted, but completely believable.
No!
And the whole movie has that weird sort of vibe. Like, his girlfriend talks in, like, a really weird, like, soft cadence, and she's a ghost who appears to, like, fight Pinker and stuff like that. And Pinker is possessing different people in his life. Like, he possesses the coach of his football team.
There's a brief battle for the soul of Coach.
Michael Murphy plays his father, and, like, the entire time Michael Murphy's a skeptic until he's possessed by Pinker and starts going on a murderous rampage.
There's a rooftop showdown, and we're not even halfway through the movie.
Oh, no. This movie, the last act of this jumps up several notches from that.
It just keeps going.
Because then Horace Pinker is going national. He goes into TV suddenly. It stops being a possession movie. And then he starts going into TVs to murder people.
Well, I mean, just to give you an idea, one scene in this is legitimately Peter Berg turning to Beaver from Leave It to Beaver and asking for help against Horace Pinker because they're
Save me, Beav!
Because they're fighting in television itself, and he defeats them with a remote.
What I love about Shocker is it's essentially Wes Craven doing an entire horror movie film series in one movie. Like, I would be surprised if that wasn't intentional on his part. Because, I mean, the first act, you've got, Shocker, the first movie, where it's just a serial killer and there's a slight supernatural element there. Then, Pinker gets put away. Then you have Shocker 2. Pinker Lives. Where you have all the possession stuff. Then he's defeated again. Then you have Shocker 3, Nationwide. Where it just goes bananas and Pinker is just Freddy Krueger at this point.
And Peter Berg and Horace Pinker having a battle through various TV shows.
Looking like an MTV music video from 1980.
God, that's what I love about that. It just turns into MTV for a little while.
Oh, the entire movie is basically what MTV wanted to be. Like, it is so insanely pop culture reverential. It's insane watching this. It is like, okay, this is the encapsulation of the 80s in a nutshell.
But the big thing that makes Shocker really work, though, is that amongst all of that zaniness and all the songs and everything else, Craven still brings all of his cravenness to it. With any violence or death in the movie is never,
it's never played for cheapness.
As schlocky as Pinker is, Craven, when Peter Berg's girlfriend is killed, it is devastating. Families being wiped out is devastating. It's treated completely real and completely seriously, like it's from a completely different movie. And that's what makes Shocker rise above to something else.
That's my favorite thing about any Wes Craven movie. He always is very invested in the characters, it seems like. So when violence happens or something goes down, you're really kind of stressed out. You hope these people don't die because you actually have a connection to them. They're very rarely just fodder.
Yeah, which is very much in retaliation against the horror movies that were popular whenever Wes Craven was first starting out, like stuff like Friday the 13th, where the kids were just cannon fodder. Yeah. And that seemed to really disturb him. Like, why is this genre just reveling in the cheapness of human life? That's kind of fucked up.
There's that famous story from when Reservoirs first screened. I don't know if you guys have heard this, but Craven walked out of a screening during the ear scene, and like he was kind of made fun of for it. But the reason he walked out was because he felt like the violence is being made fun of instead of being treated like real violence, like someone was actually being tortured. You can disagree with him, but you kind of see that's where Craven comes from with his films. Like there's no such thing as cannon fodder in his films, because go back to his original stuff. Like it's harsh when things happen to real people.
Even something like as over the top as Shocker, or like even Nightmare on Elm Street, it's really kind of, he puts a humanistic touch in all of it, which is fascinating considering like you really think of Wes Craven as like, oh, the master of horror, and you think of horror as this innately like cheap and kind of schlocky thing where no one's lives really matter because of, other slasher movies and other horror movies of the decade where he was really rising to prominence. So by association, you just think, oh, well, he makes those types of films, when really it was the opposite.
And going back to Last House on the Left, his very first movie, it looks like a lot of other kinds of films from that era, but that's not even just from the dirtiness, but that extreme violence, something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something. But it's so completely different from that because of the real conscious story that it's trying to tell, and it's so ahead of its time for that very reason. It just happens to look like, another violent exploitation flick that was coming out at the time.
Yeah, it's like an intellectual twist on the whole grindhouse revenge genre that was going at the time.
And like the themes Craven was playing with right at the beginning with that Last House on the Left, the parents becoming monsters themselves to get revenge, and just that horrid violence that happened to Mary and her friend played so real and not for exploitation. Like the scenes of them just, telling each other it's going to be okay, and it's so hard to watch because Craven's not playing. It's not like I Spit on Your Grave or something where.
Yeah, it's not exploitation.
No, and then there's this amazing part in Last House on the Left, where right after Krug rapes Mary, they stand up and Krug stands up and three baddies are standing there, and Mary kind of just goes off and throws up in the bushes, and it's just this shot of Krug just kind of just looking down, just sort of as horrible these villains are. Craven gave them this moment of what we just did was horrible. This moment of come down in the middle of this film, these horrible, despicable characters who continue to be despicable, but Craven made them feel real, which in turn only made them more terrifying.
Yeah. Which, it's not to say that every one of his characters, specifically his villains, were played on that level, but I think Last House on the Left really is memorable because of that, because it wasn't like his other stuff. Because, Freddy Krueger, even in his original vision, as terrifying as the original Freddy Krueger was, he was still a horror villain. He was still like something out of a cartoon almost, in the way that, you know, he had supernatural powers and he was just kind of messing with people and all that and cutting off his own fingers. But like when Craven wanted to create a villain, he created a damn villain.
I mean, speaking of damn villains, I mean, just go ahead and get this out of the way. The man created Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, I mean, that alone grants him immortality. I mean, it's amazing that we have so many other films to talk about in his resume, because he could have only made A Nightmare on Elm Street and still be just a legendary figure for that. And
he's like the Walt Disney of horror.
Yeah, essentially. I mean,
it's Walt Disney.
I mean, you have characters. It's amazing, like, when you think of slasher characters, okay, Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, Pinhead, all these other characters that have marketability to them, but none of them are a pop culture phenomena like Freddy Krueger is. He's the rock star of the horror villain genre. It's kind of insane how quickly and just disproportionately that character took off compared to the others.
Well, I think it made sense because all the other ones are pretty much silent, hulking stabbers, and Freddy Krueger was very similar. I mean, he's just a guy who stabs people, kills people, tortures them, but he had personality. He could talk. He had, you know, definite traits that were something beyond, you know, lurking and being quiet and menacing.
Well, also it was the fact that he had powers, as opposed to the other ones that were just like the most they could do was appear out of random places or be immortal.
Yeah, not die. They're really good at not dying.
Yeah, like Jason and Michael Myers, I mean, the biggest, the biggest, scariest things about them were just the fact that, you know, they were the focus of their particular movie, and within their framework of the particular movie, they were, you know, the most terrifying thing ever. Freddy has a weird, perverse idea just on a concept alone, which is this dude can enter your dreams. And they're like, we were talking about this when we watched New Nightmare. In his dreams, Freddy is God. Like, it's amazing to think of that character just on the simplest basis alone.
That's such an ingenious approach to a horror story, because so much of horror is based around this idea of a cat and mouse chase. You never really see the antagonist given complete agency in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like it's more perverse than you could ever do. I mean, this character is literally, in his backstory, a child molester. And he somehow manages to be more creepy. Like, he's burnt up by the town who take vigilante justice on him, and he comes back as a spirit of evil who can invade people's dreams. It's so original and so unlike anything that has come before or come since. I mean, it earns its reputation, it earns its notoriety, and specifically it earns its legacy. I mean, yeah, there were crappy sequels that came after it, and, you know, that better for worse, it became a franchise, but Freddy Krueger, as he was originally envisioned by Wes Craven, will forever be a part of public consciousness. And it's because of what Craven did with him.
Yeah, just the Nightmare on Elm Street movie alone had such a huge butterfly effect in Hollywood. Because of that, we have Johnny Depp. Because of that, we have New Line actually becoming a thing, and all the things they were able to accomplish. You know, without New Line, we might not have had the Lord of the Rings.
David Fincher, yeah, like
Dr. Moreau.
Yeah.
Just that. That's the big difference right there.
And Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze. The most important movie ever made.
Craven is really proud of his part in that. But yeah, I mean, Freddy Krueger, I mean, it goes without saying, he's a legend in terms of just all-time classic pinnacle characters. And Craven not only did one movie with him, he went back and reinvented the character. Like, it was almost like he went back and did the John Carpenter's The Thing after making the original The Thing with his own movie. It's weird.
New Nightmare is revered in many circles, but no one really specifically talks about it. And New Nightmare, more than any other Wes Craven movie, shows what a genius he is when working as a writer-director. Because, God, New Nightmare is just brilliant from beginning to end. It's so fascinating, and the things he does with it are on such a psychological scale that, and for Freddy Krueger, even though it's not even technically a Freddy Krueger movie, it's just, that's the skin that creature is wearing.
Yeah, that's...
New Nightmare is like... It's the kind of movie where you could edit Freddy out of the movie and you would still have an amazing horror movie.
It was the first, meta horror movie. He did this he did this 2 years specifically before he did Scream, but it was a movie that literally was like, okay, let's literally just have this take place in the real world. Let's have Heather Langenkamp play herself and be the action heroine of this movie. And then have Freddy Krueger actually come to life.
Let's have famous actor John Saxon be a sage.
Yeah.
With his action toupee.
Yeah, have him actually be the father character to Heather Langenkamp. And then Wes Craven himself is in the movie in a pivotal role. And it's like, it's not out of any sort of hubris or any sort of like ego. It's him legitimately playing a key role in his own movie.
It's not an M. Night Shyamalan thing where it's like, oh, I'm the most important writer in the world. It's very sincere. It's just Wes Craven wrote himself as a character because everyone else was already a character. So it made sense he would be in there. And it feels very natural, so...
It does.
Great cameo.
The way it plays into the idea of the film. And I still wish he was able to go with his original idea for that, where he's cut off his eyelids, he's being driven around a van by Michael Berryman from The Hills Have Eyes, and he's just typing every minute of the day.
Really? I never heard that before.
Yeah, there's even concept art for it and everything, I think.
Oh, that'd have been amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It's an idea too crazy for that movie. It's funny how relatively little known New Nightmare is. I remember whenever I watched it for the first time years ago, it didn't seem real to me because I had never heard of it. My parents had just, on a random whim, gotten the box set of the entire series, and that just happened to be the last VHS. It's like I watched this movie completely cold at the age of 13. It's like, but why doesn't everybody talk about this? This is amazing. How is this a real movie?
It just breaks the mold so much from all the other Nightmare movies. It's besides having Freddy Krueger, it's not really tied at all.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it's not really a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. It's about the franchise almost. And what's amazing is that the movie is so obviously made out of such a distaste and a disdain for what Freddy became in being a pop culture icon and all that. Wes Craven always felt like they've really gone off the rails with this character, and they had. Let's face it, by the time Nightmare 2 came out, they went off the rails. But he was very clearly, permanently attached to that character, and he felt like an outrage almost of, what are they doing with this? They have no idea, what my original vision was and all that stuff. And so he just went into it okay, you think you know Freddy Krueger. I'm going to show you what Freddy Krueger really is. And his version of Freddy Krueger is actually a lot more terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I also love how that movie works as almost a mission statement against the flaws of the previous movies in the franchise, because he takes a lot of ideas that were brought up in previous entries in the film series, but does them correctly. Here's Freddy using a human avatar in the real world. Here's Freddy possessing a child. Here's all these interesting ideas that they did in the stupidest manner possible in the sequels. And here's them done right.
While simultaneously, remaking parts from the original movie and doing all these clever nods and flashbacks and having a lot of really funny satire. It balances a lot of plates, and yet it still manages to be this really multi-layered, really interesting psychological horror movie. As much as it is about monsters and stuff like that, it's still largely about the character of Heather Langenkamp, not even the actress herself. It's just they create a fascinating character out of a real person.
And
It's weird.
And it's such a rumination on the effects stories have or horror at large has and what it means. It turns into a fairy tale. It turns into a real fantasy movie, actually. I mean, she almost literally just goes down a rabbit hole.
Oh, she does.
For that third act. And
yeah.
with the breadcrumbs and the sleeping pills, and idea of that, horror stories are, shackling an entity that wants to escape, but storytelling traps it whenever it catches on the imagination of the populace. It's a fascinating concept.
Yeah. And not only that, but it's like a really amazing deconstruction of, like we said earlier, the Freddy franchise, because there's that great scene in the beginning where Robert Englund plays himself playing Freddy Krueger in the quote-unquote movie version, and he just comes out and is a complete buffoon, like saying, "You are all my children."
I'm pretty sure the theme that's playing is the Freddy's Nightmare theme too.
I think so.
And it's so amazingly stark in contrast to the actual Freddy Krueger that Robert Englund plays in this movie, because he plays 3 roles. Like, he plays that buffoon actor, he plays, like, tortured, tormented, like, actor Robert Englund, and then he plays the monster.
I love tortured artist Robert Englund so badly.
Literal artist, tortured Robert Englund.
That is his official title.
It's a long Twitter handle, but people get used to it. That really is the best thing about every one of Wes Craven's movies, though. There's always a thought behind he had a lot of great thoughts going into the film. There's a lot of subtext there. He had a message he wanted to communicate. It wasn't just, okay, throw a bunch of characters together, we'll have a scary monster idea and go. Even something like The People Under the Stairs is a commentary on class and race, which is really weird considering it's a movie about cannibals trapped in a basement.
Yeah.
That movie's a hell of a trip.
I have a blast with People Under the Stairs. I don't think it ever really came across what he was trying to do. I think he maybe needed a couple extra drafts in there, but
it's fascinating. I love watching this movie.
It kind of feels like the first draft of a really awesome movie that they just went ahead and filmed for no reason. I swear to God, I will stop hiccup again.
He's possessed by the soul of Wes Craven.
Now we have to leave that in.
The thing is, every time I go to mute my mic, I hiccup like a second. Trying really hard to keep this out of the recording.
It's the Craven coming out. Quick, Wes, tell us, what were you trying to communicate with The People Under the Stairs? What about Vampire in Brooklyn?
God, Vampire in Brooklyn. When's the last time anybody's watched Vampire in Brooklyn?
Never.
Yeah. I've seen about half of it.
Yeah, I think that's about as much as I've seen.
Are we missing out? Did Eddie Murphy deliver something amazing? Probably
Could that be like the one movie where Dracula wins?
I'm gonna check.
Just to make
Live
sure.
on the show. Oh, God.
This is the first time in history there has ever been a show that pauses so someone can look up the ending of Vampire.
Alright, so to be fair, he's not technically Dracula, he's Maximilian.
His name's Maximilian, really?
His name, Eddie Murphy, is Maximilian / Preacher Polly / Guido. So he plays many roles, which isn't surprising.
Whoa, this is a horror movie starring Eddie Murphy, and Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
That is a first.
I'm gonna read this out. We're gonna experience this together.
Okay.
Max tries to convince a hysterical Rita, Angela Bassett as Detective Rita Vedder, just some context there, that she will be happier as a vampire instead of remaining in the human world, where he feels she will remain out of place and misunderstood by society. Justice, Alan Payne as Detective Justice. There you go.
Detective Justice.
Detective Justice. I knew a guy going in to become a police officer whose name was Justice. It was fantastic. Anyways, Justice plans to rescue Rita from Max and seeks help and advice from Dr. Zico. Oh, Jesus Christ, who's Dr. Zico? Zakes Moke as Dr. Zico.
We don't need the full cast list.
It's going to be confusing
Cody's
otherwise.
doing it right, okay? Let Cody do it.
We're cutting all this out anyway.
Yeah, and seeks help and advice from Dr. Zico, a vampire expert they visited earlier in the murder investigation. Zico explains that years ago, he knew Rita's mother while she was doing her research on the vampires of the Caribbean islands, and that she surrendered to evil by falling in love with Rita's vampire father. To avoid becoming a vampire, Rita must refrain from drinking the blood of an innocent human victim. Also, Maximilian must die before the next full moon. Just those two things have to happen. Anyways, Zico gives Justice an ancient dagger with instructions to either kill Maximilian or risk being killed by Rita. By the time Justice reaches her, Rita is lying inside Max's coffin, almost completely changed into a vampire, and threatens to bite Justice. Justice and Maximilian engage in a battle, during which Justice loses Zico's dagger on the floor. Maximilian encourages Rita to finish Justice off and complete the transformation. Rita rejects life as a vampire and drives Zico's dagger through Maximilian's heart, causing him to disintegrate. As her vampire self is heartbroken over the death of Max, she changes back into a normal human. Rita and Justice then embrace with a passionate kiss. Meanwhile, Julius, Kadeem Hardison as Julius Jones, now completely decayed, enters his master's limousine. He happens upon Maximilian's ring and puts it on, at which point he instantly transforms into a fully intact member of the undead. It is implied that one of the benefits of his having been a ghoul is that he is now well endowed. Okay. Overjoyed, he tells his uncle Silas, "There's a new vampire in Brooklyn, and his name is Julius Jones." So yes, even if we're thinking Eddie Murphy was a Dracula character, still loses.
That was the worst sounding movie I've ever heard of.
It didn't sound great.
And what we're saying is, Wes Craven didn't direct great movies all the time.
Okay. I'm sure that movie looked awesome.
Wes Craven made some shit. I'm not going to argue that. He had a lot of great, fascinating stuff, and he had some bad, fascinating stuff, and there's stuff that's amazingly bad. I'm talking specifically about My Soul to Take. Like that movie's a train wreck on every level, and yet it's still fascinating. Like just watching that one is hilarious.
Was it My Soul to Cake or Curse that had to, like, the studio was like, can you just reshoot the entire movie in, like, a week?
I think it was Cursed, but I could be wrong.
I think it was Cursed. Which one had Michael Rosenbaum in it?
I
think it was Cursed.
That was Cursed.
I'm going to assume Michael Rosenbaum had the class not to be in My Soul to Take.
So yeah, it wasn't always great, but he always tried. There was a lot of effort there. There was some fascinating stuff. I'm sure there's something worthwhile in Vampire in Brooklyn, but having not seen it, I can't tell you what it is.
Even his failures are kind of genius in a weird way. Like,
again, People Under the Stairs.
Yeah, People Under the Stairs, or you were talking about fascinatingly bad. Wes Craven's one venture into the comic book movie was Swamp Thing.
Swamp Thing.
That's where he went
amazing.
Which is not a particularly good movie on any real level.
I still maintain that is a perfectly solid, like, drive-in B movie.
I mean, he did kind of design it as sort of a parody of, 50s mad scientist movies. And in that realm, it functions.
It's a fun movie.
It doesn't have any money to it, so that's kind of impressive that he was even able to film it.
Yeah. But then you also have, you have a lot of stuff that is weird, but also memorable. Like, Anton Arcane in this, in the comic books, I mean, of course, he doesn't turn into this, but in the movie, he just, for whatever reason, becomes a pigman.
And then grabs a sword.
I will say it uses Captain America logic. So anything that's inside of you, the serum brings out. So apparently, Alec Holland was just a Swamp Thing at heart.
Swamp Thing at heart. My autobiography.
Also, part of the third act, Swamp Thing, the main hero of the movie, is running around without one arm.
That's why it's a perfect adaptation of Swamp Thing. He's just in pain the entire time.
And depressed that he's Swamp Thing is so depressed in that movie. He's so sad. You just don't want to be... Can we not cut the Swamp Thing? He's so depressing to be around.
Can we not show the Swamp Thing?
Him trying to do science as Swamp Thing, but failing because his lab has been burned down.
Which is so weird because it's not like he doesn't have opposable thumbs or something. His hands work perfectly fine. They're just swamp hands.
Swamp hands.
Oh my.
Damn these swamp hands.
I mean, Jesus Christ, it's still worth watching, like, for Adrienne Barbeau's character alone, because, like, there's this one scene where she's discovered, like, the compound, in the beginning, there's a compound, like a research laboratory that Alec Holland works out of, and, like, she goes outside, and then she sees that terrorists have come in and or have seized the compound. So she grabs a gun and starts mowing down people left and right.
She goes 0 to Ripley in like 5 seconds.
It's amazing.
Fucking crazy. And she's mowing down people. It's like, you don't even know if they're evil. What are you doing that for? Like, you don't know if everybody's working in this compound is secretly evil. Stop.
And then also her name is Alice Cable.
Which is incredible.
She just sounds like a comic book character. Not really based on any particular comic book character. She's loosely based on 2 of them, but she's kind of her own thing, and it's amazing. Like, that's another thing that's been prevalent in a lot of Wes Craven's filmography is just never having a weak female protagonist on, like, any level. He pays special attention to that.
Well, again, that was something that was done very deliberately in response just all of the movies that were clogging up the theaters at the time whenever he was cutting his teeth. It was just women in peril, women falling down, women running from things. That's part of, his main impetus in making Elm Street was just he wanted to make a movie where the teenage girl beat the living shit out of the slasher in the end.
Now, that is to say, he would make up for Women Falling Down and New Nightmare because, good God, Heather Langenkamp falls down and is thrown around in that movie more than any actress I've ever seen.
Something I realized when watching all these movies in such a short space of time is that Wes Craven is obsessed with his characters falling down.
He is. That's his favorite.
Like Stu falls down in every scene and Scream. Swamp Thing just cannot walk, apparently. Oh!
He's wearing his swamp roller skates.
There's a 5-minute scene in Swamp Thing of just Swamp Thing gets up, turns, an explosion happens, knocks him down the ground. He gets up, turns, gets knocked back down, gets up, turns. This goes on forever.
Swamp Thing manages to find a flight of stairs in the swamp just so he can fall down them.
Oh, then his arm falls
He's
off.
holding a teacup. Oh.
Well, to be fair, even his origin is that he fell into a swamp.
That is true. Oh!
I've got the people under the stairs playing in the background right now, and there's one scene where Everett McGill falls down like 3 times.
God, he is just falling everywhere in that film.
He is.
Oh!
He just keeps, like, every time he stands up, he's got a moment where he's like, I'm doing okay, and then someone smacks him in the face, and he, like, topples over again.
And he's wearing a gimp suit. So.
And the gimp suit. God damn. People need to talk about that villain more often.
Yeah, it's like, why? What the hell is going on there?
That is a movie where Big Ed and Nadine from Twin Peaks are evil cannibal serial killers who are apparently really into some kinky shit.
Well, they're inbred.
Sitting on a house with a ton of gold doubloons and cannibals underneath.
And who are the landlords of the projects, by the way?
None of this is false. We're not describing anything fake. This is actually all in the movie.
Well, this is a weird fucking movie.
It really is. It's amazing. Oh, God.
It somehow features Ving Rhames as the lead for, like, the first act.
Ving Rhames, the secretary of pussy.
Who's then eaten by Big Ed.
Yep.
And he tastes delicious.
Then Roach plays with his corpse before Roach dies heroically.
Oh, poor Roach.
Getting a single coin.
It's so weird how, like, even the stuff that really isn't worth your time is way worth your time. Like, by normal standards, like, if a director had movies like this, it's like, you could just skip those. It's like, no. Wes Craven manages to make those worth your while.
I can't think of a lot of movies recently, like horror movies, that have nearly as much personality as some of Wes Craven's failures. Like, even a movie like Cursed, which, I don't know, are you guys big fans of Cursed?
Never seen
Nobody's a big fan of Cursed.
Okay, wow. Oh, there we go. We'll have to watch that sometime. Like, even that one's got enough personality going on for it where it it makes it stand out. You can still remember Cursed, even though it wasn't great.
Cursed is a werewolf movie starring Jesse Eisenberg and Christina Ricci.
With werewolves that flip people off. It's just fun.
That is magical.
It's the prequel to Wolf Cop.
Well, Craven never did, if only. Craven never did one thing with any of his movies. Like, sure, stuff with you can argue that with Swamp Thing, but there's always so many different themes and ideas he's throwing into one movie as he possibly can that something's eventually going to stick, even if it's not very good.
Well, Nightmare on Elm Street is a teen movie, plus a slasher movie, plus a fantasy movie, and then it just becomes Home Alone in the end.
Or something like Scream, where it's so meta you're not really sure what level it's supposed to operate, but it works on every one of those levels. It's a mystery, it's a horror film, it's a slasher, it's a comedy, it's a reflection on violence in cinema, it's an ode to cinema, at least horror films. It's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, even something like The Serpent and the Rainbow, which is a mostly played straight, semi-autobiographical, biographical, take
Voodoo.
on voodoo.
Bill Pullman's Vacation, 1983.
It still manages to have actual movie magic and stuff like that into it, and really over the top villains and stuff like that.
Dude pulls off his head and throws it at Bill Pullman.
Oh god, remember the zombie bride who opens her mouth and the boa constrictor just shoots out of it?
Oh.
Died.
Yeah, I have a really, really bad fear of snakes. That movie was horrible for me.
Hey, there's a spider scene.
There's a spider scene, so it got Mike too.
Yep. Or, oh man, when they just bury Bill Pullman alive. Oh, bury me. Yeah.
I'm not dead. Well, just all the weird, Craven was awesome at surreal imagery. He was good at that. And
that fascinated me because
the ending of The Serpent and the Rainbow, that whole part where he's just walking through the corridor with all the zombie arms and witch stuff going on.
It's fascinating that Serpent and the Rainbow has the most dream imagery out of all of Craven's movies, counting the Nightmare films. It's fascinating because I had never seen The Serpent and the Rainbow until we watched it just recently.
Same.
I was always under the impression that it was just a straight adaptation of the factual book with some hallucinations thrown in.
No.
I did not expect actual voodoo to be seen in this movie. Bill Pullman battles a dark voodoo wizard at the end.
whose skin is burnt and he leaps through a wall at him.
In an evil chair.
God,
because Wes Craven is obsessed with evil chairs.
And Bill Pullman gets a nail in his dick. Serpent and the Rainbow starts out okay, it's just some weird, realistic voodoo stuff with some trippy, the stuff screwing with his head, so he's having trippy visions, and you don't know what's if he's just tripping the fuck out or what's real and what's not, and then it's just straight up supernatural by the third act.
And most of it, the majority of the movie is played super serious and super straight and super slow. I mean, it's a really slow build kind of movie almost.
Oh, yeah.
But once it gets going, it doesn't go off the rails like Shocker does. It goes off the rails within, the last 5 minutes almost.
And then the villain is dragged to hell.
After Bill Pullman defeats him with his psychic powers.
Really how I wanted Independence Day to end.
It's a prequel.
Ah.
Yeah, it's just so amazing how Craven managed to take so many genres, so many ideas, so many concepts, and just merge them together in this weird mishmash of something that resembles a movie with thought and coherence. He was really smart about that and really meticulous.
Well, even Red Eye, just in the third act, kind of becomes a political thriller.
Yeah, after being a horror movie that takes place on an airplane, a slasher, a hostage movie.
God, did he write Red Eye?
I'm on IMDb right now. I could find
He did not.
Nope, doesn't look like it. Abby's right.
God, it's just such smart timing, because that's when everyone was really terrified of planes and all that.
Well,
so it's 9/11. That was such a smart.
It was
2005
that came out.
Well, people don't really talk about Red Eye that much, but Red Eye was really, that was the first Craven movie I saw. I saw it the year it came out, and that was the first Craven movie I ever saw where I was that was masterfully made. There's something about it that had, a really unique quality, and, I mainly watched it because, I mean, I was...
It was Cillian Murphy's piercing blue eyes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean...
And his throat full.
Yeah, basically. But, it was so well... I haven't seen it since I first saw it, but I still have, like, a vivid memory of a lot of it because most of it takes place in one location and then it switches locations, but, like, it's still just... Even as one of the more straight movies that he does, because, I mean, it doesn't have a lot of, like, it doesn't have surreal imagery or anything like that from what I remember, but it's still well done. It's still, like, really, it sticks with you. It doesn't just, like, pass you by.
It's so damn good. It's so tense. It's like a long-ass heart attack. And it's all he's able to do with just two characters sitting in a plane seat for most of the movie.
Yeah.
It's really impressive, and so unlike anything he had done previously to show Craven could do lots. Like,
It's such a great statement saying, I don't just do the big operatic stuff. I can just do two characters in a seat.
Cinematically, I mean, he was very, what's the word, like, ambidextrous?
Ambidextrous?
Yeah. He was very, I mean, he could just... There was no... I mean, yeah, he's known as the master of horror, and that's mainly what he did, but he was a filmmaker.
Well, I think he always kind of felt trapped by the idea he was the horror guy, but that's kind of the rut he got stuck in. He did get a couple of things out of it. Yeah. Yeah, he started off, editing porn films, and somehow, ta-da, The Hills Have Eyes.
I'm curious, what do you guys think about The Hills Have Eyes?
I'm actually not a big fan of the original. For me, The Last House on the Left and The Hills Have Eyes are really hard to get through. Now, Wes Craven is always beating expectations. Like, if you ever hear a commentary with him, he just sounds like a very gathered, calm man. Very nice to all his co-stars and workers, and gentle laugh and sense of humor. But then occasionally he'll slip and say something really dark. And those earlier movies were more of his dark side with less of the humor. And it's hard for me to get into them as much as some of his later films. So I have a tough time watching Hills Have Eyes.
I remember liking... It's been a while since I've watched Hills Have Eyes. I remember liking 2 more than 1.
Which is weird, because I thought 2 was just supposed to be a complete train wreck. I haven't even watched it.
I don't know. It's been a while, so maybe I'm confusing the 2. I guess maybe I just...
Ouch. I just look at the IMDb score. It's got a 3.7. I believe Jacko actually beats that, doesn't it?
Nothing beats Jacko.
No, then IMDb's wrong. Jacko shouldn't have a score.
I'm really curious what Jacko scored.
Jacko's not a movie.
We even put this in, like, the write-up. Oh, no, Jacko has a 2.7. My apologies.
That's right. That's still too fucking high for Jacko, I'm sorry.
It gets a 0.7 for Leanna Quigley.
Okay, you got me there. That still doesn't explain the rest. I guess maybe that they were able to take the lens off the camera, so they should get some stuff off of that. But I like Hills Have Eyes. Last House on the Left is very rough since it had... I would really have liked to have seen them... Like, that's one of those movies I'm glad that they were able to remake it. Same with The Hills Have Eyes, actually. I would have liked to have seen Craven maybe remake it himself in the 80s, using his original script, Night of Vengeance, but... Because that is a dirty, dirty film.
Not to go off on like a little mini tangent here, but speaking of films of his that were remade, going back to New Nightmare for a minute, it's also fascinating to watch that movie and realize, like, there's really no reason that they had to remake Nightmare on Elm Street when Wes Craven already did it and did all the things that you would do in a Nightmare on Elm Street remake.
It's a pre-make.
It is. It's really well done in that regard, but, like, it's... Like, I would say of all of the Wes Craven remakes, like, the Nightmare on Elm Street one is the widely regarded as, like, the least effective and the least well made. Yeah, like, Jackie Earle Haley is in it, and that's about all you can say about it.
I'm a little worried now.
It's cool to see a pre-Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, Rooney Mara, but she doesn't actually do anything.
Yeah, she hated being in that movie.
And Black Canary.
See, I'm a little concerned now that Wes is gone, because while he was around, no one would think to touch the Scream series.
Yeah.
I mean, the most they would do is the TV show, which is so far removed it's barely Scream. Now that he's gone, I imagine it's only a matter of time before they say, well, instead of a Scream 5, what if we just scrapped the whole thing and made a new Scream? And I'm very scared what that will be. Because
the Weinstein's controlling things. They would love that.
Oh, I'm sure they would.
I'm about to do something incredibly terrifying, so you should probably all brace yourselves.
I pooped my pants in preparation. We're good.
Oh, good, because this involves you.
No.
I'm going to give you the floor, Cody.
The floor.
I am going to let you talk about your love of Scream.
Let me look up some poetry quick.
Cody's allowed to look up poetry. I can't bring the fucking Poetic Edda anymore.
Well, you're welcome to.
Always can bring in the
The
Poetic Edda.
No, you guys make fun of me.
Well, yeah, that's why we want you to bring it in, so we can make fun of you.
Sons of bitches.
Sons of bitches. Scream.
I'm going to talk about the glory of Scream 3.
Oh, God. Don't. No, we're ending the podcast now. No one talks about Scream.
Roman is my god.
No. Scream. I'm going to keep this very short, actually, because I have a lot of thoughts on Scream, and they're not organized right now, so I'm just going to kind of gush.
You have, like, binders full of stuff,
That's
man.
the problem. I got to condense. I got to get the mission statement set up.
The mission statement.
Scream to me is just about a perfect horror film. It still works. Back in college, we pulled all of our furniture together into one of the dorm rooms, and we had a Scream marathon. And there were girls there who were still screaming because they hadn't seen Scream, and they didn't realize it was scary. And that was fantastic. I'm someone who's seen the movie 100 times, so I didn't really jump. But it's great to see that it works for other people so well. But it can be funny, too. Stu is still hilarious with all of his over-top antics. The mystery aspect maybe wasn't the most solid to begin with, and in retrospect, since so many people have aped it, it's hard to give the film all the praise it's due because of the originality, because it's been ripped off so often. Scream is responsible for basically saving horror in the 90s, because what else was there at the time? If we didn't have Scream, we get a couple horror films, but it'd be like westerns nowadays. You get one or two, and who knows. But yeah, Scream saved the slasher. It saved probably horror in general. It told us that horror films could be smart. They could have a real message. And like I said before, Scream is amazing because it works on so many levels, and you can choose what level you want to enjoy it on. If you want to go in and just have a scary, funny movie, hey, here you go. If you want to look deeper into it and try and figure out what Wes Craven is saying about the inspiration of violence and where we get it from, how media impacts us, here you go. Or maybe you want to go deeper and you want to talk about meta-commentary in film and how every piece of media we consume is really informing us how we're supposed to consume media and what we're getting out of that and what all the shorthand means. And if that's a good thing, a bad thing, how can we twist that? How can we go against expectations to raise the art form? Scream has all of that, and it is absolutely amazing how well it works. There's very few other films that are as accomplished as Scream. And the best thing was, it wasn't even overlooked. It was a hit. People loved the movie because it worked so well, and it lives to this day. It still works great. I can think of a few things that really compare to it. Maybe Cabin in the Woods. And that has the benefit of just being absolutely gonzo in its third act. Scream was, I think, quality all the way through. I can say a lot more about Scream. You'd be stuck here for many hours. I'm just going to leave it at this. Go watch Scream. You can enjoy Scream 2. Scream 3 happened. I personally enjoy Scream 4, although I know a lot of people don't. Fuck Bruce Willis. That's a Scream in joke for you Scream fans. I don't want Bruce Willis coming to my house and beating me up, because I'm sure he could. Don't bother with the Scream TV show, but everything else Scream, yeah, get into it.
Yeah.
If you'd like to hear Flexo's further thoughts on the Scream franchise, check out Pulp Commentary, Scream.
Pimpin'.
I'm sure we'll do a Bop and a Movie commentary for Scream at some point as well.
Maybe one of the
And an
lists.
It's the
episode.
same audio file.
I mean, I spend a lot of time talking about Scream itself, but I don't spend nearly as much time thinking about Scream 2, and that'd be interesting because that has a lot to say as well.
I agree. Scream 2 is, in a way, overlooked.
Scream 2 came out 1 year after Scream, and considering they didn't realize they had a sequel on their hands when Scream came out, that's damn impressive that they managed to put together something as good as they did.
What's interesting is I haven't seen all of Scream 2, but from what I've seen, it's actually it's very clever in the way it sets up like the tropes of almost the horror sequel.
Mm-hmm. No,
But,
they did a great job and really continued on the same trajectory from Scream 1, where Scream was all about, horror. Scream 2 is the continuation of horror and how we have to franchise everything.
And Scream 3, I mean, for all its faults and everything, I mean, it does still have a lot of ideas at play. I mean, it's not like Craven just phoned that one in.
Yeah, and Scream 3 is fun to watch. I mean, it's part of the Scream canon. Yeah, it's not that enjoyable. It's not as smart, but it's still, It's not like you're sitting there going, oh, this is so hard to get through. This is a bad movie. Scream 3 is totally fun to watch.
Well, the weird thing about the Scream franchise is each movie reflects what it's commenting on. So Scream 3 is basically the shameless cash grab, and how do we keep these franchises going? So there's all the retcons and that kind of thing to make it stand up, which means the actual text of the film has to include those things. It has to be kind of what it's talking about and maybe making fun of and thinking about, which is unfortunate because then you have to sit there and watch something that the movie doesn't necessarily agree with.
Scream 3 ends up being too meta.
I don't know if that's true. But it's Scream 4 is kind of an interesting deal, too, because it's basically a film that's set up as a remake and a sequel at the same time, and they're running against each other. So it's pretty much a very self-hating sequel, which is very weird because those rarely stand up, because why make something if you hate the material? And it only works because Wes Craven loves the Scream franchise so much that he had to make another entry saying, hey, fuck someone else stepping in and remaking Scream.
I kind of felt the same way about Scream 4 that a lot of people feel about Scream 3. That's where the meta stuff kind of broke for me. Is that with Scream 4, you kind of get to a point where the movie is commenting on itself, commenting on itself, commenting on itself, commenting on itself, commenting on itself. And at that point, I'm like, oh, okay, you've gone up your own ass at this point.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, but I don't know.
I can
For
see
me,
people's complaints, but I personally love Scream 4.
Scream 4 works for me, whereas another movie that basically talks about, hey, fuck doing remakes, Jurassic World, does not.
Yeah.
It's very weird to see these self-hating sequel reboot remakes, and it's a weird tightrope of trying to figure out, okay, how does this actually work? We're saying we hate this thing, but we're making one because we love the original. How do we reconcile all of that? I think they get away with it in Scream 4. I don't think they get away with it in Jurassic World. Then again, people probably don't agree with me because Jurassic World made about all the money in the world, and Scream 4, I think, made 32 cents.
Well, I think with that kind of stuff, you have to be sincere about it. Like, it reminds me of the ad campaign for the Vacation remake, which was just, hey, it's a really bad idea to remake Vacation. Wink, wink. It's like, just because you said it doesn't just,
I appreciate the fact that Scream 4 just came right out and said at the end, don't fuck with the originals. Like, there's the mission statement. Like, that Wes Craven's just saying his piece right there. That's kind of his mic drop moment.
Oh, yeah.
That was his new nightmare.
Which, I mean, it's unfortunate that ironically enough ended up being his final mission statement. Like, that was his last movie forever. So it's weird that Scream 4 ended up being what it was from what you're describing. Like, I haven't actually seen Scream 4 myself. I've barely seen any of Scream 3, but from what you guys are describing, it sounds like he honestly, like, almost prophetically ended on a note where it was like, yeah, you can kind of see where he's kind of leaving a final stamp on the world of, like, not even the world of horror, more like the world of cinema, where he's just kind of commenting on something.
Yeah, when it comes to entertainment, there's always that divide between, is this art or is this pornography? And not to cast either one in a positive or negative light. Pornography just being anything that's solely made for entertainment without substance, and art being something that's maybe not made for entertainment but has a lot of substance. Ideally, you get something in the middle where it's both, and that's what Wes Craven can do. Unfortunately, when you get a lot of these cash-in remakes or sequels, it's just people swooping in that have nothing to do with the original property saying, hey, that movie made $300 million. Why not make another one for some extra cash? And I like the idea that Wes Craven's final film is him basically putting a line in the sand saying, no, fuck that. You gotta make movies that have integrity and are entertaining. You can't
I'll
just make
take
something.
on all of you.
And then cancer. But,
Wow!
Christ, man.
Jeez, man.
what I'm trying to say is no one ever wins. No one wins. Doesn't matter if you're Dracula or not.
Everyone is Dracula.
Everyone is
agree.
Dracula at heart.
I heard a story recently. I was listening to another memorial podcast on Wes Craven.
Did theirs have more or less dick jokes?
Way, way less.
All right, we're winning.
Does any movie podcast have less dick or more dick jokes than us?
Can we make that into an advertisement? Box Office Pulp, the most dick jokes you can possibly get out of a movie podcast. That's not on pornos.
On an episode about Schindler's List.
Oh, God. So many sad penises.
But they have these Masters of Horror dinners. There's tons of horror maestros show up, and this was just a couple years ago. They had this is after Wes kind of quietly retired. Obviously, we know why now. And for this particular dinner, Dario Argento showed up because he was in town mixing a movie. And apparently Wes was just, he was nudging the person next to him going, it's fucking Dario Argento's here. Like, Wes, even just a couple of years ago, after having been doing this since the 70s, is still going, holy shit, it's Dario Argento. Can you believe that he's here? You believe Dario Argento's coming over here to talk to me? And that sums up Wes Craven so well. He never got jaded, and he was still such a fan of cinema and horror cinema, and that's why he was so goddamn good at it.
I think he was good at it because he didn't think primarily this is a horror film, although obviously he factored scares in. He thought this is a commentary on something. Fear is a good way to drive that home. Fear is a great way to make a social commentary, and that's what he excelled at. He had great thoughts, and he was smart enough to incorporate them in an entertaining way.
Horror means something.
I mean, unlike a lot of horror directors, I mean, and not to bash the genre because that's popular to do, a lot of horror directors really don't use fear as a tool for something. They just use fear. Like, that's just the long and short of it. Wes Craven utilized it like it was a chisel to, like, the Michelangelo or something like that.
Yeah, it's like how there are two kinds of comedians. There's the kind who are just there to make you laugh, to give you that gut punch, visceral reaction to something. And then there's the kind of comedians that are using laughter to make you think and make you question the world around you. And I think it's the same for horror directors and horror writers, people who are just there to give you a cheap thrill, and then the people who are there to really make you think about what fear is.
And Wes certainly did that.
Indeed. And, I mean, I can't say that I've claimed to be a lifelong fan of his because, I mean, I've only barely seen any of his filmography up until recently, but I respected the hell out of the man for as long as I can remember, just based on what little I knew of him. And that definitely didn't change. In fact, if anything, my appreciation for him has grown in the last couple of weeks. So
that about covers it. R.I.P. Wes. We're definitely going to miss your movies.
We'll miss you, Wes.
I also like how we put all that in, like that deep, meaningful eulogy, and the whole time I'm just thinking about Shocker.
Shocker! Shocker! We're in the fight, it keeps getting harder. We will up the power. That's it.
That's a wrap, folks. Go home.
Go with God, bitch.
You are all his children.
And like that, he's gone.
Imagine if there was a crossover between The People Under the Stairs and A Nightmare on Elm Street, where it's Freddy Krueger in the gimp suit.
Freddy would wear a gimp suit.
I think he would. I'm surprised they never came to that.
Leather Freddy.
I still understand why he wore the gimp suit.
I don't know. He just shows up in it with a shotgun.
Like, just out of nowhere, just boom, I'm in a gimp suit with a shotgun, chasing a small black child.
Just throwing kids left and right up buildings. Like, that was his power suit.
You know that scene where he's just grabbing his dick, and I was just like, what the fuck is this movie?
I like to think like it's like Hannibal with the murder suit. Like, he just has a suit for going around with a shotgun.
I'm always for murder suits.
More movies should have murder suits.
I agree. Swamp Thing had one. This was his entire body.
Horace Pinker had a murder suit. It was the jumpsuit.
That weird checkered print on it that was just loud.
Yeah, why did they decide to make his prison outfit look like a cab uniform?
I guess it was just to give it kind of the Freddy thing, so it looks iconic, so he doesn't end up kind of looking ridiculous. I mean, it works. If you put a jumpsuit that looks like that on, you know what it's a reference to. All 8 people who know Shocker.
Okay, so in the background, I've got people under the stairs running, and they have one of the people from under the stairs jump up and grab someone, and because it's on Blu-ray, you can clearly tell it's just a mask that they're wearing for their, like, cannibalistic face, and it's not zipped in the back. So the back of their head is just, like, wide open. I just love the final shots of the people under the stairs walking out into the night, just confused, like, now where do we live? As millions of dollars floats down from the skies, and all the neighbors just go out.
Ever.
Do the Right Thing is playing over top.
You just expect the people to all put on sunglasses and start learning about rock and roll. Like it just becomes Encino Man.
Albino cannibals just escape from this house and no one says anything about it, and they wander off into the distance like, where are they going to live now?
This is Box Office Pulp Guy, and this has been a Pulp Podcast production. Now please, 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 put a gun in my mouth and pull the trigger and say goodnight.
And now, on with the show.